In this review we're at a different scale, which is 1:87, and that's because it's the normal scale for tower crane models, and they're in this scale to keep them a manageable size. This one is the Wolff 700B by Conrad, and we're also going to have a look at the optional conversion kit, and that turns the crane into the US version of the Wolff 700B. Anyway, let's open up the base model and its high quality packaging, and there's an instruction sheet that goes with it, and we'll look at that in a moment. And it's all got a very nice quality feel because the parts are in foam rubber, and there's a lot of them because there's also a bottom layer in the box. So here's the instruction manual that goes with the base model, and it's high quality. To begin with, there's an excellent parts list, and then the assembly of the model is shown on a step-by-step basis. All of the photos are clear, with perhaps the only thing not quite so clear is where the hoist rope goes when you reeve the model up. There's a nice touch on the back of the manual, which is the various jib configurations that are possible. Unsurprisingly, we'll begin at the bottom because it would be hard to begin at the top. And the first thing to do is to clip the cross frame to the replica concrete blocks at the bottom. And that's the first stage to make the model nice and stable. Next up, we fit an access platform on top of the cross frame. All of the connections on the model are made by plastic bolts, and we need to separate those off of the moulding sprues. Now we've got some bolts, we can begin to build the tower, and we carefully drop that into place on top of the cross frame. It's then secured by the plastic bolts, and it's nice that they follow the bolting pattern of the real sections of this crane. The plastic bolts are good because they form a nice tight connection, and for stability we need to add some ballast at the bottom of the tower, so we add in these two big stacks of replica concrete. They are made of metal and they are nice and heavy to give some weight at the bottom of the tower. Next, as a point of detail, we add a capacity board which clips in at the bottom, and then we can carry on building up the tower. Each section on the model is made up of two sections of the real crane, and it's a pity that the tower sections are not the same length as the real crane sections. And that's because there is a climbing frame which goes with the model, and before we install it we need to line it up with the tower head section, and the ladder in that has to line up with the ladders in the tower that we've built. Once we've done all that, we can then drop the climbing frame over the tower, and as long as the bolts have been pushed in properly, it'll slide down reasonably well. So there's the lower tower head section fitted, and we'll bring the climbing frame up to meet it. And then we can pin the two together with more plastic bolts. The next piece to add on is the counter jib platform, and that has the machinery deck with the two winches on it. The two lower struts are metal and they are press-in connections, and then you secure the counter jib with a couple of plastic bolts at the top. The next part is the big tower head section, and it's nice that that comes in separate parts just like the real crane. So here we'll follow that real crane sequence and build it up on the ground. All of these main parts are metal except just the two short cross struts, and when we've got the whole thing ready it can be lifted up by the giant hand crane. At the tower top, the front section clips downwards, and the two back braces are push-fit connections in from each side. The connections work well, although you might just need to clean the paint out of some of the holes. Next we need to give a man a home, so we'll add on the cab, and that's got its own platform and pushes into the side. Before we move on, we'll just lower the strut that's at the top of the tower head section, and we'll see later that stops the jib being pulled back too far. Next on is a metal walkway and ladder, and there's another piece that goes on the other side. Up to the top of the tower head section, and there's another small platform that gets pushed into place. It's nice to see there's plenty of health and safety, even in 1:87 scale. Back to the machinery deck, and we have the steelwork for a small auxiliary crane, so we can service the winches if they ever need it. One of the big strong points of the model is the jib, and that's because it's all been modelled in its accurate sections. They join together with interlocks at the bottom, and a pin just goes through the connection at the top. As on other parts of the model, it can help to clean some paint out using a screwdriver, and then with the holes properly lined up, it's easier to get the plastic pins in. There's enough sections provided to make a full 70-metre jib, and here it is all joined up. And straight away you can see that one of the very good things is the excellent straightness of that jib. It's not quite ready to attach though, because there are some other things we need to do. And we'll start by adding on some guides for the assembly brace ropes. These are plastic and they just clip in to the bottom edges of the jib. Another piece that we need to clip in is the Wolff sign, and that's a little bit more fiddly to install. After that we can clip on the assembly brace ropes, and the connection point for these depends on the jib length you've chosen. Next we have to put together the jib brace and pulley block, and again you make up the length you need based on the length of the jib that you're using, and the sections are all joined by plastic bolts. Now we move to the end of the jib and the brace is fitted, and there are a couple of access platforms which go right at the jib end, and these enable access to the hook block. Unlike all the other walkways, these ones are plastic, and that will be to keep the weight down. Talking about weighting, we can add some weight, and this is the first of the counterweight blocks. And we'll now get the giant hand crane to lift up the jib. And in real life, the total weight of this jib assembly at 70 metres long is over 23 tonnes. So just make sure your own giant hand crane can handle it. The box can be used as support if the hand crane gets tired. And the first thing to do is to connect up the assembly brace ropes. The purpose of these is to support the jib during the assembly phase. And here you can see them at work while we add the remaining pieces of counterweight. Whilst the jib is held like this, the luffing gear gets reeved up. And as if by magic, here it is all properly reeved. The other thing to do is to reeve the hoist rope, and that runs from the winch drum up to the tower head, and then back down to the bottom of the tower head. You then have to feed it carefully through the jib over the pulleys to the end of the jib. And there at the end of the jib you can see the hook block attached. So the crane is erected, it's ready to work, and we just need to now raise the jib. Looking at the detail, there are nice graphics on the ballast blocks at the bottom of the tower, and the capacity board is nicely printed. The tower sections are nice castings and they have an internal ladder and platforms, and to go with them is the climbing frame. The handrails and platforms are nicely modelled, although the frame itself looks quite heavy, and the lifting ram is just a solid metal part. The cab is really nice considering its small scale, and there's even windscreen wipers on the glass. At the back there seems to be an air conditioning box, and the counterweight blocks are nice enough but perhaps a bit too smooth to look like concrete. One nice aspect of the model is that all of the pulleys are metal. The jib sections are fully triangulated with fine quality lattice work, and the mesh walkways give them a detailed appearance. The assembly rope bracing works well when it's in use, but out of use the type of material used means it doesn't hang nicely. And if we look at the hook block, it's very detailed for the scale, and looks good compared to the block on the real crane. In terms of the features, the crane rotates very well, and the two winches are operated by a key. It gets inserted in the drums and there's enough friction to hold any loads. One other thing that's supplied with the model is a Wolff crown plate, and you can use that as a load on the hook block. The luffing also works well and you can raise the jib to a steep angle, and the strut prevents the jib going too far and falling backwards. Although it's only 1:87, it's a big model, so let's get the tape out. And in full configuration, it's around 50 inches or 125 centimeters to the top of the jib. What we've seen is the European configuration of the crane, but there's also a US version. And Conrad has made a conversion kit so you can switch over to the US version. It comes with its own comprehensive instruction manual. And again, the packaging of all the parts is very nice. The manual is of the same standard as the base machine, so there's a full listing of the parts. And various assembly photos show you where the modified parts go. And again, it's great that the various options for the jib configuration are all shown. One of the big differences on the US version is the counter jib. It is a bit shorter and it has a different counterweight arrangement. To make the swap is not a quick job, because basically you've got to undo all of the reeving. But here on Cranes etc. we'll make the change even if we don't do it in an entirely realistic way. We'll also make another change, which is to alter the jib back to a scaled 35 meters, and here you can see the jib extension has been added. To run a second hoist rope to the jib extension we have to insert some pulleys, and these have to be clipped into the jib. There's also an extra winch to be added, and that also has to be carefully inserted into the jib. Once it's in, it clips down into place. It's a different crane, so we need to change the capacity board. And we've got some other different parts to fit. There's an additional platform at the level of the cab, and then we can install back the main platform up on the machinery deck. And finally there's another access platform which goes at the back. Conrad has got a long history of making tower crane models in 1:87 scale, and this one is the best they've ever made. Other than the double height tower sections, it's true to the real crane, and it's a very nice combination of functions and detail. Both the 700B model and the US conversion kit are excellent.